Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Maybe someday I'll have an intro, but today is not that day. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about continuing our ideas of going through the Constitution. So we're going to look at the limits that are placed on the governments in our Constitution. So both at a national level and at a state level. Our goal, once again, is to create a limited government. And so there are limits built into the Constitution that restrict what our governments can do, both at a national and at a state level. And I know I already said that, but so we're going to detail all those, okay? So number one, well, our first category I guess we're going to do is talking about limits to the national government. So these are all things that only the national government are limited to. Then the second part of our talk here will be things that the states are also. Now, some of those things are going to be similar. They're going to have the same limitation, but other ones, some will be expanded. So our first one here is the national government cannot cancel the writ of habeas corpus. Now that, if we remember from a We the People lesson, that means like show me the body or bring forth the body. It allows people to have their day in court, that the government can't lock somebody up and then never bring them before a judge to go through the trial process. You can't just take political dissidents or people that you don't agree with and lock them up and never get their day in court. Now, that is only during peacetime. In cases of rebellion or invasion, we do have precedent, the Civil War as one example, where that writ can be restricted or canceled for a limited time, but usually only in a narrow sense. There was a lot of flack that Lincoln got for canceling the writ during the Civil War, but it can happen during those times. So you can't, the national government can't cancel the writ of habeas corpus, show me the body. The second one is no bills of attainder. I think this is also shown up somewhere, but possibly not. Yeah, probably. It might not have. So bills of attainder is a way to circumvent the judicial process. The idea is that Congress makes laws, presidents enforce laws, and the judicial branch or judges determines whether constitutionality of laws, but also in criminal and civil cases, guilt or innocence. Now, this is a way to get around that by having the legislative branch pass a law to declare a group or a person guilty of something. Now, we're not allowed to do that. Those are called bills of attainder. And that is why we're restricted from doing that. You can't have that kind of thing done in the United States. Next one, no ex post facto laws. Now, what does that mean? It's Latin. Anybody know? No, maybe not. All right, well, let's break it down. All right, so if we look at one of the words we are familiar with that, which is probably the second word, post. Now in sports, post means what? You're right, after the game, right? Post game. So this is something post something law, right? Facto, fact, post fact laws. So we cannot pass laws and tie them to determine somebody guilty or innocent of breaking those laws. No, well, not really determining if they're guilty or innocent. I'm sorry. It's more, we can't have laws passed after the fact and apply it to someone who broke that before it was a law. Let me clarify. Okay. So let's say there's someone in this room that's left-handed, and there probably is. Okay. Now, we pass a law that says using your left hand is illegal and is punishable by 60 days in jail and a $5,000 fine for every instance. We can't go back and say, okay, well, yesterday someone used their left hand and now we're going to declare that they broke that law. Ex post facto means that you can't do it after the fact. Now, from that moment on, if someone uses their left hand, then of course they can be held responsible for breaking the law. Let me scoot over a little bit here. Nope, wrong way. It's hard to get in the circle here, the circle of trust. Okay, but that's what it means. You can't do a law after the fact and apply it to someone before, but every instance after that, of course you can. Okay. Now, the only time you could do this is if it's for people's benefit. And I don't really mean that you're posting a law after the fact. It's more applying consequences or benefit. So you can only really do it if it's for someone benefit. Like, say, the left-handed thing, right? Let's say we have that law in place and someone gets convicted of a crime to do that. Well, if the next person comes along and says, okay, well, I'm going to decriminalize that, then the person that got convicted and sent to jail can ask for the new classification to be applied to them. Sort of like marijuana laws, right? People that broke marijuana laws when it was illegal, now that marijuana is legal in some cases, if you got convicted under something that would have applied, your lawyers can go and say, okay, can you apply the new law to this standard? And so therefore it can be to my benefit. So no ex post facto laws if it's not to our benefit, but only for our benefit, okay? What else? Okay, so we talk about tariffs a lot. We've talked about tariffs and things of that nature. Now, those are taxes on imports, right? So the national government can tax imports. However, the national government cannot tax exports. If Arizona wants to sell something to another country, California, Florida, the national government cannot put a tax on those exports. We're not allowed. Number 5, the national government cannot give a preference to one state's commerce over another. They can't subsidize, let's say, Florida orange juice and not do the same subsidy for California orange juice, or Wisconsin cheese versus California cheese. You can't give preferential treatment to the commerce of one state over another. The national government can't do that. Okay. The next one. Seems like we're talking really fast, and I apologize. Trying to give you a little extra work at the end of this thing here. So the next one. You can see this in work at our school. If you are involved in student council, if you are involved in NHS, if you're involved in Renaissance, any of those kind of things, if you want to spend money, you have to request a purchase order. Well, that purchase order is a requisition for an appropriation, meaning an appropriation means to approve the expenditure of money. Revenue is what we call things when we try to generate money. We try to generate revenue. And then appropriate is how I want the money I have to be spent. So no money in the United States can be drawn from the Treasury but by appropriation. That's usually done through a budgeting process. There's always continuing resolutions. Sometimes we hear in the news about a government shutdown maybe looming, and that's because if they don't pass a budget, then they haven't approved any expenditures of money, so the government has to stop operating. Sort of like the Student Council or NHS. If they want to spend money, they have to get a purchase order, which means they have to have a meeting. And in the meeting, they have to approve what that purchase order is going to be doing. Let's say $300 for a dance DJ for the, actually that dance already occurred. Hopefully it did. Hopefully everybody had a good time. By the time I filmed this, that dance had just happened. But for, let's say, a dance DJ, right? When you do that, then you're authorizing the school district to free up the funds for you to spend that. And that's what this means here. No money, the national government can't just spend whatever money it wants. It has to have an appropriation to approve them spending the money. Number 7. No titles of nobility can be granted or no presents or titles accepted from a foreign state. Now, what does that mean? It means that the United States, one of the main guards and one of the main worries was, and it's in our preamble, was to make sure that we ensured a Republican form of government. We wanted to promise, and we wanted our document to state that we were never going to create a hierarchy. We were never going to create a aristocracy. There was never going to be royalty in the United States. And so there's no going to be Lord Baltimore, except for the original one, but we were part of the United States at that time. There's no going to be barons, no dukes, no princesses, no princes, no kings. There would be no titles of nobility in the United States. Not only that, but if you served in the United States government, you could not accept any foreign title from a state. So if United Kingdom, Great Britain, they wanted to give you a knighthood, so you'd be like Sir Cody Crowell, you could not take that, or the Duchess Brianna Swan. If you served in the United States government, you could not accept that title. You would have to renounce your title from a foreign state. Additionally, there are limits to our government officials in what they can and cannot accept as gifts. Now, originally, it was supposed to be no presents. Like, you cannot get any personal gift from a foreign power. Now, there are limits to what you can accept. You have to declare it. You have to say where it comes from. It has to be under a certain dollar amount. Now, if you're a president, a lot of times you can get around that in a way, is you accept it on behalf of the American people. Then what you do is it gets donated to your presidential library or gets donated to some museum, and it's not your personal possession. So that's a way to save face, where if someone presents you with something, you don't have to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't take it. Now, if you do take certain things, then yes, there are lists, and you can look them up on the internet, lists for how to, like what they accepted. And it ranges from chess sets to books, to saddlebags, to boots, to watches. The presidents have accepted lots of things. They just have to declare it so that everyone knows where it came from. Okay, now that's national government. Now let's look at state governments. So very similar to national government in ways, but we're going to start with some differences first. Now, states are not allowed to enter into a treaty or an alliance. Arizona can't team up with California to declare war on New Mexico, or vice versa. They also can't accept an alliance with a foreign country. You can't have Washington or Montana side with Canada. They are not allowed to enter into treaties or alliances with other nations or other big-ass states. Now, or even with each other against other states. Coin money is another limit. States are not allowed to coin money. Now, I say that term, but what I really mean, of course, is not only coins, but also bills. They can't make their own currency. Now, I guess the gray area is that what if a state decided to create like a Bitcoin type thing? I would assume it would still have to fall under the same thing, where one of our problems under the Articles of Confederation, once again, was that the 13 states each had their own currency, and that caused wild fluctuations in our economic state. The economy of the United States was always in turmoil at that time because there was no standardized currency. So they needed to solve that under the Constitution. The way to do that is give the national government, now the constitutional government, the power to coin money and then restrict all states from creating their own. So that's what they did. And so that's why you have our lovely pieces of paper, which have no meaning besides the confidence of the United States behind them. But that is our currency. It's our legal tender. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to Congress, because they are in charge of those kind of things. Number 3, once again, passing bills of attainder and ex post facto laws. Just like the national government, the states cannot pass bills of attainder declaring someone guilty of a crime through the legislative process, and they can't do ex post facto laws either. Okay. Number 4, the obligation of contracts. The states cannot states cannot hinder how contracts are carried out. When you, if Arizona, let's start over. I apologize. Okay. Taylor Davison has a business in Arizona. She creates contracts with other states to supply goods and services. Then Arizona gets mad at, let's say one of the states is Nevada. Arizona can't say, okay, if you've made contracts with Nevada because we don't agree with their policies, you no longer have to carry them out. They cannot pass laws to hinder that obligation. on all contracts. Contracts have to be legally binding, and therefore they can't step in and say, okay, well, this contract's valid, but that contract you no longer have to enforce because we don't like that business, or Arizona does not do that kind of stuff. Like say, let's go with marijuana, right? If you created, well, no, that's a bad example. Let's not do that at all. You get it, right? Essentially, contracts have to be carried out. You can't just stop. States can't say you can't enforce these contracts. Additionally, they cannot grant titles of nobility, just like the national government. Those are restrictions on things that they can and can't do. They cannot tax imports or exports. So they can't assign duties to anything. It goes back to the Articles of Confederation. Remember when one state, if you wanted to bring your products through that state, they could charge for imports coming through their state and then leaving? We had to get rid of that. So the national government can tax imports, but the states cannot tax imports or exports. The national government's the only one that has the ability to do part of it. Okay, and that's to ensure free trade in the United States. It also is that interstate commerce thing, but it also prevents California from putting a tax or making Florida orange juice. And I say it a lot, so maybe I'm craving orange juice. I don't know. Trying to put an import tax on Florida orange juice to try to sell more California orange juice. Okay. Next one, and the last one, is keeping troops or ships of war. Now, the national government's in charge of creating a standard, permanent Army and Navy. However, the states do have a National Guard, but those are not considered the same thing. The National Guard is very more similar to a militia, not a professional army. The states cannot keep professional armies. They cannot have the Arizona Army and the Arizona Navy and then the Arizona Air Force and so on. They can have a National Guard. I know it's splitting the hairs, but there is a point, and it's more that National Guards are comprised of your citizens, and they operate still as citizens, while a professional army gives up citizen abilities and is under a different system of government or even a system of laws, which is why if you're in the military and you violate a law, you don't go before a superior court judge or you don't go in front of a trial judge. You go in front of a court martial, which is a military tribunal for your actions because you are under a different code of conduct and a different system of laws than that. So the states cannot do armies or navies. They can't have their own. Okay. Now, those are the limits that we have in our Constitution. I know I didn't really talk about a lot of stuff here. This is our last day, hopefully you're doing this in sequence before the test. So we need to wrap up and make sure we have all of our stuff done. Starting in Canvas also is our next seminar, which is not this week. I believe our next seminar is March 4th. Okay. Hope things are going well. Please give me any questions you might have. Make sure you click like and subscribe. And hope you're having a good day. Bye, guys.